Today on
Doomed!
It's the great Twitter hack, Charlie Brown. Ladies and gentlemen, today, on this episode of Doomed with Matt Binder, I will be breaking down the entire big, scandal, controversy, event, whatever you want to call it, that happened this past week at one of the really biggest online platforms there is. That is everyone's favorite website, the one they all know and love, Twitter.com. It's a pretty crazy thing that happened at Twitter this past week. And if you're confused about it, if you're not all up to date, I'm gonna let you all know what's going on, plus the latest about what we know at this moment. And I'll also explain why it's such a big deal for anyone who's going, it's Twitter, who gives a shit? I mean, yeah, in some ways, but in other ways, it's bad. Oh, I'm not pulled up on the YouTube feed for our wonderful live stream viewers. Let's fix that right now. Hello, everybody. How are you doing today? I hope you've all had a wonderful week, or whatever it is that you're having whenever you listen to this episode. It's just me today on this episode of Doomed, a rare Matt-only episode. You only need me for this episode. I'm the expert on this one. I actually talked to a few people to come on, but scheduling didn't work out. And this thing's pretty important right now. I mean, it happened Wednesday night. Wednesday afternoon, I should say. And I meant to do a show, actually. I was thinking about doing a show Wednesday night. But there was still so much information that was coming in, I felt, let's wait a few days, see what comes out. And I'm actually glad that we did. Because if I had told you this, if I had broken this down in an episode on Wednesday night, or maybe even Thursday, we wouldn't have had the information that we have now. And this is really interesting now. I mean, even if you don't care about Twitter, you don't care about hacking, but if you like multi-layered mysteries, if you're a mystery guy or gal, if you're a mystery buff, if you like all those mystery shows and podcasts, which I know are big, if this episode does really well, maybe I should pivot. Probably more money in doing those podcasts. Probably money, period, in those podcasts. But if you're into any of this, tech, politics, cybersecurity, mysteries, weird offbeat stories, then you're going to want to pay attention to this one. Because this is a good one. It's a fun one. It's a serious one. And, let's do it. But before we do that, I rarely remember this when I have a guest on. Patreon.com/MattBinder. Support this show. And help the show continue going. Help the show grow. And when I say the show, I'm talking about the free show. It's for everybody. Because that ain't happening if it isn't for everyone who is a patron. They keep the show alive. But patrons also get some bonuses. They get bonus show material. Now that we hit the goal, we dipped below it, but we did hit it. I'm working on a few extras. So also subscribe to the YouTube channel at youtube.com/MattBinder. Follow me on Twitter at MattBinder. What else? Twitch. I'm on Twitch. Twitch.tv/MattBinder. That's doomedpod.com for the podcast version of the show. Most of you listen to the podcast, whether you get it on iTunes, Google Play, or wherever. But now let's actually get to this story. So, if you're on Twitter, Wednesday afternoon around 3 Eastern time, you might have noticed, well, if you were a Bitcoin buff, which I'm sure so many of you listening to the show are, you might have noticed a few of the big, Bitcoin news or Bitcoin company Twitter accounts tweeting out a weird message. And let me pull up the message. I'm not going to read every single message, but it was basically the same message, varied. And here's one example. We are giving back to our community. We support Bitcoin and we believe you should too. All Bitcoin sent to our address below will be sent back to you doubled. And there's a long Bitcoin address. I believe it is 42 characters long. Only going on for the next 30 minutes. Now, maybe you would think to yourself if you saw a message like this, well, that's odd. Let's sit back and see what happens. Maybe you were someone who saw right through it from the beginning and said, it seems like this account got hacked. This seems like a scam. Or maybe you're a risk taker and you thought, hell, most of the time these are scams, but maybe this is the one in a million that isn't. And you sent off a little bit of Bitcoin to see what would happen. And, I guess coming from a Bitcoin related Twitter account, one that, was a account that was within the cryptocurrency industry, and this didn't seem so out of, obviously the scammy part of it seemed out of the ordinary, but it is a Bitcoin tweet, so it fits. But then the tweets started to trickle in, all, varied, but with the same message, the same gist. Send money to this Bitcoin address. And here, let me pull some up for you so you see what I'm talking about. All right, so we got Elon Musk tweeting out, feeling grateful, doubling all payments sent to my BTC address. You send 1,000, I send back 2,000 Bitcoin address. The official Apple Twitter. We are giving back to our community. That was the same one that went out from the other one. We got Uber. Due to COVID-19, we are giving back over $10 million in Bitcoin. Double your money, the address. And one more I'll show you, because I think you get it, but Bill Gates. Everyone is asking me to give back, and now is the time. Send me 1,000, I give you 2,000. 30 minutes to do it. So you get the picture now. And this went on for, a couple, I would say I can actually tell you. Let me give you the exact. For like an hour or two, this went on. So we had Apple, Elon Musk, Bill Gates, Uber. That's what I showed you. We had Jeff Bezos, Mike Bloomberg, Barack Obama's Twitter account, Joe Biden's Twitter account, Floyd Mayweather, Kanye West. A lot of big verified users were tweeting this out. Now, if you know anything about how these sort of Twitter accounts get hacked, usually, the way these things usually occur is the hacker or attacker usually doesn't really do any hacking. They're not finding an exploit and breaking into Twitter's system. What they usually do is they social engineer the account they're targeting, the account they're going after. Here's an example. Say you wanted to target Kanye West. You found Kanye West's email. You put together a phishing email, which basically would look like a Twitter login or an official Twitter email. You'd send it to the Kanye West email that you found, and you'd say something like, you'd make it look like it was from Twitter with the Twitter graphics that they put for their own login emails. And they go, we believe someone has accessed your account. Please log in and change your password. And the hope is you would trick this person to log in, to click the link you sent them in that email and log into their Twitter account to change their password. But what they really clicked was a link to a website you set up to look like Twitter's login page. Thus, they would input their password on the page you set up, and you would have their password, and you would log in and send this out. Now, to do this for the amount of accounts we saw on Wednesday afternoon to evening, and to do this for that many verified accounts, you would probably be the luckiest person in the world to have all these people fall for it, A. B, fall for it at the same time. Or C, if not fall for it at the same time, fall for it over time, but not realize they fell for it, giving you enough time to collect all these big users so you could save it up for the big day where you sent it all out across all these accounts at once. It's, that would be a stroke of luck beyond all belief, all those accounts. Now, to anyone who saw what was happening and, sort of understood this, I think they pretty much knew that this was much bigger. That's not what happened. What was pretty clear to myself, I was covering this for Mashable. I'm still covering for Mashable. I've wrote a number of articles. You go to mashable.com/Matt-Binder and see what I've written about it so far. If you need to see what I'm telling you, it's there. And, a number of my coworkers, like Jack Morse, wrote some great stuff about it. So if you're seeing this happen, you knew how this stuff usually plays out. You knew right away that what was going on was there had to have been some sort of intrusion into Twitter itself. This wasn't a user screwing up and losing their account access. This was at the platform level. Now, that doesn't usually happen. That's a big deal. And why that's a big deal is because if there's an exploit at the platform level, if someone has access to the company's backend somehow, then how much information does this unauthorized user have access to? One person gets hacked, that one person has to worry. They know they were hacked because they know they're the ones who gave up their information to a hacker through a phishing email or through some other social engineering method. But if Twitter itself was hacked, then they could have access to every user that is on Twitter. And furthermore, they could have access to that user's password information. They could have access to that user's personal details, name, maybe not address for Twitter, but general location. Oh, if they've turned on, if they've turned on location settings, they could have that too. Actually, email, phone number, contacts, direct messages. The question is, what do they have access to if they get into Twitter's backend? So as this is happening on Twitter, there are a bunch of tweets going around, and these tweets have two different kinds of, there's a bunch of tweets going around talking about it generally, but there's two specific tweets going around that I want to pay attention to. One is a screenshot specifically that were going around of Twitter's backend. Now, if this is really Twitter's backend, their administration panel, then obviously, who would have access to this to share the screenshot? Obviously, the person who's tweeting this out. And the second screenshot I want to point out, it's also of the admin panel, but it's specifically what in the admin panel whoever took this screenshot wanted to focus on. And let me pull up both screenshots. Now, there's word that people who posted this on Twitter were getting their accounts suspended until they deleted this stuff. YouTube's not owned by Twitter. Hopefully, Twitter doesn't have a problem with me doing this for the sake of journalism. But Here is the administration panel, the alleged administration panel. I feel safe showing it to you and saying this is the administration panel. This is Twitter's backend that was accessed. There are some things now. This is a Mashable posted screenshot. I believe it was who I previously mentioned, Jack, redacted some personal information for this particular screenshot. But you'll see it has some details. It shows basically some information depending on, the attributes related to that specific account. Information about, is the email verified? Is the account active? Different labels that Twitter itself has appended to this specific account. That's another story we could talk about, because you can see search blacklist, trends blacklist. That's something. Clearly, Twitter has a way of labeling certain accounts, and whether these labels actually do something to the accounts on the platform is another story. But let's focus on the hack. So, let me get to the next screenshot now. Yeah, that's the one I just posted. Here's the next one. Now, this is the one I want you to pay attention to a little bit closer, actually. Here we go. Now, this is an unredacted one. And if you look at this screenshot, and the reason I'm showing this one is this was a specific one that was shared. And if you look at this screenshot, you'll see a rather short Twitter handle. @B. Now, and you'll see, look down below, joined December 2007. Whoever owns this account registered that handle, that short @B Twitter handle, a long, long time ago. Now remember this, because I'm going to get back to it shortly. But I wanted to show it to you now as we're talking about what was happening in real time on Wednesday evening. So, those are the screenshots that are going around. Everyone's talking about this on Twitter. One interesting thing I want to point out is that Twitter is obviously way late, in my opinion. I don't know if they realized what was going on right away, or if they didn't know what was going on and how to deal with it when they did figure it out. But about an hour and a half into this, Twitter's tweeting out they're on it, trying to figure out what to do. And let me use the Elon Musk account as an example, because this was a particular one that was hit numerous times. Usually when this happens, when an account is hacked and a tweet goes out, whenever the issue is fixed, the tweet is deleted, and that's it. Whoever deleted the tweet obviously got the account back, the original owner, Twitter itself, and they're taking care of it. Hacker no longer has access. In this case, however, multiple verified users like Bill Gates, Kanye West, Elon Musk, I'm using the example, they were sending out this tweet multiple times, even after tweet number 1, tweet number 2, tweet number 3 were deleted. So that means that whoever had access wasn't losing access to the account when the account holder would change the password or log back in to regain control of their own account. So obviously this is something bigger than them just having access to a specific account. They're clearly able to hack back into an account very easily once an account user took back the account. Again, all signs point to this being an intrusion into Twitter's backend. And so Twitter decides, after some time, I guess, that the best way to deal with this, and it seems, looking back, it seems like they made the right choice, even though it seems like they could have done this even earlier, was to block verified users from tweeting. Now, it's unclear exactly, at the time I should say, who exactly was being affected. Now remember, we're all seeing these verified users tweet out this Bitcoin scam with the Bitcoin address. And as this is happening, I should note, people are sending this address Bitcoin. When I was paying attention to this, and I decided, finally was like, oh, I should see how much money this Bitcoin has been making. It was at something like $56,000 US dollars worth of Bitcoin. And I believe by the end of the hack, this person walked away with about $100,000, give or take, in, US dollars in Bitcoin. Now, whether you think that's a lot of money, it was worth this huge endeavor, this huge hack. We'll get to that too shortly. But so Twitter shuts down the verified user's ability to tweet. And I think everyone thought just verified users were affected. Because if you think about it, how many people are following a random user who isn't verified, who maybe has a couple thousand followers? If they're tweeting this out, if their followers aren't really, part of the press or another verified user with a large following, their warning about that account being hacked isn't really going to get so far. So, of course, everyone's paying attention to the Bill Gates, the Apple accounts, the Elon Musk, the Joe Biden, the Barack Obama. But there were other accounts tweeting this out that weren't verified. And should I jump ahead a little bit? No, let's hold this. There's a lot of jumping back and forth here, and I want to try to keep with the timeline of how this all unraveled. So, Twitter stops verified users from tweeting. About 45 minutes later, verified users are allowed to tweet again. It seems like Twitter finally fixed whatever the issue is. Now, of course, speculation's running rampant at this point. How did this happen? It seems pretty clear even to most people now that this came from a Twitter intrusion. On top of that, the question is now, did someone actually find an exploit in Twitter? Did someone at Twitter with this administration level access get hacked? Or was this an inside job? Did someone at Twitter do this? Or did someone at Twitter provide someone else with the access to do this? And now remember, this isn't the first time something like this has happened this is the first time something this big on this level has happened at Twitter. I need to make clear, this is probably one of the biggest, it is the biggest social media platform attack ever to happen to Twitter. It is definitely, without a doubt, one of the biggest platform attacks for any social media platform. And to reiterate what I was saying, if you remember not too long ago, I believe it was 2017, a contract worker who was leaving Twitter, who was ending their contract with Twitter anyway, I believe that was the case, but anyway, a contract worker with Twitter who had pretty high level access thought on his way out, might as well delete all of Donald Trump's tweets and close out the account. And now Twitter obviously was able to get all that back and reopen his account, but someone had access at that level who worked with Twitter. So it wasn't that crazy of a speculation. So we end the day with pretty much, we end Wednesday with pretty much not all that, much information about what exactly went down. Twitter basically gave, a short summary in a post about, how they've done what they could to mitigate the issue and why they shut off the verified user account access to tweets. And, we just knew very little at that moment. Now, the next day we find out that, the FBI is going to launch an investigation into this. Because obviously you have former President Barack Obama and the current Democratic nominee, Joe Biden, their accounts were affected. They also tweeted out this Bitcoin scam. Now, one interesting thing that happened here, and I don't really think this has any larger bearing on the hack, but I think this is interesting to point out. Now, when you get hacked, one of the first things you think of doing, obviously, is changing your password, right? What ended up happening here is because Twitter was trying to mitigate, and this will make more sense when I get to the next revelation that we find out. What happens here on Thursday, we're now in Thursday afternoon, 24 hours after the fact, some of the verified users still can't access their account, even though most have not only, been able to regain access, but also tweet from their account, which every verified user was blocked from doing for a few hours on Wednesday. Now, why those few accounts were still blocked were because apparently, if you changed your password while Twitter was trying to mitigate the attack, something in Twitter's system, I guess their mitigation efforts, saw this as, we got to keep this account locked down because we don't know who changed their password. So you had verified users who were, whose accounts were closed off for 24 hours, maybe even more in some cases. Now, this is part one, I'll get to more later, of why this is such a big deal. There was, and I'll use an example, there was a tornado warning for somewhere, I can't remember where, somewhere in the Midwest on Wednesday. And one of the verified accounts that couldn't tweet anymore was the local news outlet's weather service that was tweeting out the information about this tornado. Now, they were no longer able to tweet out that information about the tornado. What a lot of people had to do was they had to utilize non-verified accounts for employees working for their company and then tweet it, retweet it, I should say, because you still had a retweet access. You just couldn't send tweets. Retweet it from that verified account. Now, obviously, it's a workaround that works, but, if you are trying to get important information out there as a verified user, and, a lot of verified users are verified for important reasons. They provide important services that could save lives. And you couldn't send that information. This hack could have cost, someone very important minutes, hours even, in news they needed to know to protect themselves and their family. Who knows, But that's just one small thing, I think, that needs to be pointed out. Well, not small, really, but one thing that needs to be pointed out overall as to why this hack was such a big deal. Now, let's get back to, where was I? Okay, so Thursday. So, things start coming out Thursday night now. Now, Brian Krebs, who is a longtime cybersecurity reporter, he starts collecting information. And then another hacker who wasn't involved in this hack, he's a security researcher who also has a history of being a hacker, he also started researching. Because he actually had an account that was hacked. So he had an inside look at what went down as someone who is in the cybersecurity profession. So you have people who know what they're talking about here, looking into this. And what we know by the time Thursday night, Friday morning rolls around is that the hacker, however they got into this, got into the Twitter admin panel. And well, we don't know how they got into the... I want to make this clear. At this point, we don't know how they got into the Twitter admin panel. But what we do know, because of this cybersecurity researcher and cybersecurity reporter Brian Krebs, we do know a little bit about who are some of the people involved and how they got access to these specific accounts. And this is where we get into some of the more really, talk about a small world, really bizarre things that sort of connect to this whole story. Not directly involved, but they connect. Now, that hacker I'm telling you about, who had an account that was taken over, goes by the name Lucky225. And Lucky225, when he doesn't go by a real name, so that's how he wants to be known as, and we respect that because he's obviously dealing in a profession where he wants to be anonymous. Lucky225 runs a Twitter account that uses a handle basically that is at the number 6, just at 6. Now remember that Twitter panel screenshot I showed you before that just showed that one of the tweets that the hacker had access to was at B, another short handle. This is where that comes into play. So Lucky225 runs the Twitter account at 6. And the reason he runs at 6 is because it once belonged to another hacker named Adrian Lamo. And if Adrian Lamos' name sounds familiar to you, there's probably a reason it does. And that's because Lamo is the informant who told the U.S. authorities, well, basically turned over to U.S. authorities, information that led to the arrest of Chelsea Manning back in 2010. Now, Manning, at the time, had basically put together this trove of classified documents from the U.S. government and confided, I guess is the word, in Lamo, who had an online relationship. In terms of relationship, I mean an online acquaintance. They spoke about their hacking or data accessing endeavors. Because again, Lamo, remember, is a hacker himself, and Lamo turns Manning in. Now, the reason Lucky225 has Lamos' account at 6 is because Lamo died in 2018. Now, what we're going to now find out about this Twitter hack, at least before Twitter or any other authorities give us information, because this is really where it's from right now. Everything we know about how individual Twitter accounts were accessed is because of a dead man's account. A deceased hacker who turned Chelsea Manning in. Again, a hacker who died in 2018, who turned Chelsea Manning in 2010, is going to be the reason we now know about the biggest Twitter hack ever in 2020. It's a crazy, if you enjoy little offbeat things like that, this is one of those weird, like what the fuck stories here, that's crazy. So we have this information from Lucky225 now, and this is what happened. Lucky225 sees this play out online, so he decides to go check, hey, let me see if @6 was affected. He goes to log into Twitter, sees he's been logged out of @6. Aha, if you've been logged out of your app, that that's never a good sign. Why were you logged out? If you're usually logged in, someone probably logged you out somewhere else. So the next step is Lucky225 goes to checks email accounts to find out, how did this happen? And what Lucky225 finds is a text message sent to his email address because the phone number that it was texted to was his Google Voice address. And if you know Google Voice, this all gets sent to the Google Voice account via email. So it's all connected. You get all this stuff. You get, your voicemails, your phone call history, all sent to you if you use a Google Voice number. And that text message is a text message from Twitter from even before the hack played out on Twitter. So that means @6 was taken from Lucky225 before the hacker even started tweeting out these Bitcoin tweets from Musk, Biden, Obama. So Lucky225 looks into this and pretty much is able to come to the conclusion, and I've looked into it, many others have looked into it, Brian Krebs looked into it, and this seems to really be how it played out. Again, we still don't know how the hacker got access to the Twitter administration panel, but the hacker gets access to that Twitter admin panel. And once in there, they're not able to tweet from our accounts. So a Twitter employee or someone who accesses the Twitter admin panel cannot just start tweeting from everyone's account. Like who cares? Don't need any credentials. That's it. That's good. But what they can do is two very important things. Well, they can do a lot more than two very important things, but these are the two very important things that they can do that enabled this hacker to take over Musk, Apple, Uber, Gates, etc. They can change the email address connected to a Twitter account. So whatever email you use for your Twitter account that acts as, the email that you're, if you need to do a password reset because you've got your password, gets sent to that email. Twitter admin can change this. The Twitter admin panel can also be used to shut off two-factor authentication, which if you're a security person and you care about, access to your account, I'll give you know what this is, but if you don't, here's the rundown, basically. It's a second layer of security for any account, really, that has a two-factor authentication setting. For Twitter, basically, this is how it works. You go to log into your Twitter account, you put in the password. That's great, but what if someone else had your password? No problem, because once you put in your password, before you get access to your account, Twitter will also send you a message to your phone. Now, all two-factor authentications are a bit different. Some of them send a text message with a code that you input on the app or website itself, or some of them use something like Google Authenticator, which is basically an app that gives you a random assortment of numbers at any given time, and when you open the app, you put in that random assortment of numbers into the Twitter login or whatever login. So there's different ways to do it, but anyway, that's two-factor authentication. It's a second layer that requires use of your phone. So just because someone has your password doesn't mean they can log in from anywhere. They also need access to your phone number. So obviously, Lucky225 had two-factor authentication turned on. He would have got that message saying, before you could access the account, put in the code we just sent you. He didn't get that. But apparently, even though you could turn two-factor authentication off, it doesn't remove the phone number, which is how he got that text message to begin with. If you remember, Twitter used to be you text through SMS, so you would put, text message, SMS. So you would put in your phone number to connect it to your Twitter account. So, it's confusing, I know. So to reiterate, from a Twitter admin panel, could change email, could shut off two-factor authentication. Once you do that, you could put whatever email you want in there, such as the hacker's email, and then click password reset. Twitter would send the reset link to the new email you input in the back end for that account, which in this case would be the hacker's email. Hacker would click, put in his own password he wants to use. Voila, he would have access to that account. But, as we know from Lucky225, phone number is still connected, so he got that information that someone changed the password. We all caught up? Good, just making sure. So Lucky225 basically puts this out there. Pretty crazy, right? I mean, the fact that we have this information now makes a lot of sense and shows you, again, how the hacker got access to those accounts, with still not knowing how the hacker accessed the Twitter admin panel. And, makes people sort of understand exactly what access the hacker had. Now, we know the hacker was actually inside these Twitter accounts. The hacker was using the Twitter accounts just like you and I use them. They had logged into these accounts individually and were tweeting from the accounts. They could probably have changed, well, they could have, but they could have changed the profile information, done various other things, which again, we'll get to in a second. So Krebs looks a little bit more, that cybersecurity reporter who also looked into Lucky 225's information, puts out an additional report that basically states that there was something more happening here before the tweet started going out. And this will sort of inform us as to the type of person who hacked into these accounts. Now, I think a lot of people were worried about at the time that, was this a state-sponsored attack? Was this Russia or China or, I don't know, any other boogeyman that the U.S. likes to use? Obviously there are security issues with a lot of these countries, but also it's a lot of times the default for a lot of our intelligence community to just assume, when a lot of times this is actually a domestic attack. And again, we don't yet know. But here's some information Krebs found out that then, here we're now going into Friday, that a New York Times report even gets further into. Now, the New York Times even goes far enough as to actually find some of these hackers who were involved. And when I say involved, I think people are... Let's also read... This is, again, I don't want to confuse anyone here, so I'm stopping myself before I confuse you all. We don't know if this is the work of one hacker or many hackers. We do know that there are numerous people involved in the entire scheme. And by the entire scheme, I mean, we know there are more people involved in the taking over of specific accounts and what happened to those accounts. But the people the New York Times spoke to, who are the people I just mentioned, did not have anything to do, that we know so far, with the actual hack into the Twitter admin panel. So the New York Times and Krebs find out that there is another layer to this story. And it goes into the OG usernames aspect of this. And now, what is that, you're asking? OG usernames are basically, well, it's short for original gangster usernames or original gangster handles, whatever they want to call it. Now, there are forums, one particular, I should say, called OG Users, where hackers try to gain access to short, cool, generic social media profile handles. For example, @6, @B, whether it's Twitter, Instagram, TikTok, whatever. And it just doesn't necessarily need to be short. There's a market for names like Joe. There's a market for, being the person running the @sex account. So hackers try to steal these names and pawn them off, sell them on these forums. Now, sometimes it actually works out in the benefit of the person who buys them. If it's a user who hasn't used this account in years, perhaps the person died, perhaps the person just doesn't log into this platform anymore, they actually pay $1,000, $2,000 for this short name. They get it, and they get to use it forever. If it's a name like, @sex, you could set up a Bang Bros affiliate company on there, and you could probably make a ton of money tweeting out links to Bang Bros from @sex. And when someone pays money to sign up for these membership porn sites, they get a cut. That's why I'm just giving an example as to why these handles are important to people. But also, it's a status symbol. If you're a hacker who tweets from the handle at hacker or at H or at whatever your name is, Bob, at Bob, that's like, whoa, this guy has been around the block. This person has been online for a very long time. So that is the OG username aspect of it. And what was happening was the hackers that spoke to New York Times, basically, I guess they wanted to clear their name a bit, or they just thought it was fun to be part of the story, because when it comes down to it, what they could actually get in trouble for is something much less than the person who hacked the actual Twitter admin panel can get into. Don't want to get ahead of myself. Don't want to confuse you. So, speaking to the New York Times, these hackers basically said this. In a Discord group they're in, a person going by the name, or persons, again, we don't know how many people are behind this yet, a user going by the name Kirk basically started showing off that he had access to pretty much obtaining any Twitter account he or she wanted to, or they wanted to. And as this person spoke to this at Kirk spoke to these people on Discord, they decided to give more information to these hackers. They had access to the Twitter admin panel. They were able to take these accounts directly, name an account, it was yours. So altogether, the people who actually had access to the Twitter admin panel and these hackers in this Discord forum decided, hey, let's get a few OG handles. Let's go to forums like OG users. Let's sell off these handles for a couple $1,000 each. Because those hackers in the Discord forum were known users of OG users in these other forums, they would act as the middlemen for these marketplaces, meaning basically Kirk would send them the username. The buyer on OG users would send the middlemen the money. So now the middleman would have both the handle and the money. And they would then make the trade over, send the money to Kirk, send the handle to the buyer on the forum, and the middleman, would take a small cut from Kirk's payment. And apparently they did this for a number of handles, and that's actually how Lucky225's handle @6, the former handle for Adrian Lamo, was stolen. Someone paid Kirk through the middlemen on OG users for the @6 Twitter handle. And that's actually who Brian Krebs found out. When he did his report, he actually was able to uncover who was behind the person who took @6. Because that person, who is proudly talking to New York Times under his real name, by the way, Joseph O'Connor, he basically said, hell, I have nothing to do with this. I basically have a bunch of OG names. This person also has access to, also is behind the handle @dead and @Joe with a 0, J0E. So this is someone who collects these sorts of names. All I did was buy this name off a forum. Had nothing to do with the hack, nothing to do with, being part of the selling of the hacked names. I'm just a buyer in this. That's how you found me. Again, whether he has more into it, has more to do with it, remains to be seen. We'll I guess, find out shortly if O'Connor is telling the truth about his involvement or his lack of. In my opinion, I think so far this person, who knows how he got his other OG handles, but when it comes to the ones he got from this hack, I think it checks out. Could be wrong. Again, this is all developing, so we'll see. So am I confusing you all yet? Are you lost? So this New York Times report, again, that comes out late Friday, we find out a little bit more information, actually. And so we now know how these big verified user accounts were accessed. We know, and I should add that these OG usernames were being sold for hours before the Bitcoin tweets went out. So that means that Kirk, whether it's he, him, they, Kirk, the actual person who was in the Twitter admin panel, they were in there for a long time, long enough to steal all these accounts, sell them on the OG username market, then start stealing individual verified accounts to then, start this Bitcoin scheme. So they were in there for a long ass time. So this New York Times report that comes out a Friday evening also goes into this. And this is really where it gets even crazier now, in terms of just how many layers we're looking at here. Now, remember, we're now talking about Twitter. We're now talking about various SMS and two-factor authentication applications. We are talking about Discord, because that's where the middle men met Kirk. We are now also wrapping... What else are we wrapping into this? We're wrapping the social media marketplace forums into this. And now we have another platform to bring into this. Slack. So, New York Times is talking to that guy O'Connor. And what O'Connor and the other hackers think happened from talking with Kirk on Discord is that Kirk, or whoever's behind Kirk, found a way into Twitter's company Slack messaging account. And for those of you who don't know what Slack is basically like an internal message board that companies use. It's a platform of its own. They pay Slack for their very own message board that basically allows all the company's employees to direct message each other, create separate rooms for different teams where they could all message everyone who's part of that team could message each other. It's like a big old chat room. It's like a private corporate Discord, really. And honestly, I think it works a little bit better than Discord in actually keeping everything, more organized for you to be able to find important information and conversations, details that are shared in the Slack messages and groups. And that's also to Twitter's detriment that Slack is so good at doing that. Because Kirk gained access, apparently, so far from what we know from what these hackers got from Kirk. And once Kirk was in the Slack for Twitter, Kirk was able to find the credentials for Twitter's admin panel and access to the company's server. So that means Twitter felt that their Slack was a safe place to outright share access, credentials in plain, whether texts, links, whatever, the access required, right there in Slack. And, he's been on this show, he's going to come on soon too to talk about something else. But my coworker, Jack Morris, has pointed out recently is that when Slack actually filed to go public, one of the things they had to write in their thing they have to write when they go public. I'm having a mental block right now. But one of the things they wrote as to one of the problems the company could have is that companies put so much of this private information in their Slacks that if someone unauthorized ever gained entry into Slack, it would look very bad for that company, and in turn, Slack, because that company was paying Slack to house this information. So all this appears to have happened. Now, again, going further back now, we don't know how this hacker or hackers got access to Slack in the first place. Like, it keeps, I feel, every time we get a little bit closer to getting a question answered, there's another question to ask. At first, it's how did they gain access to these accounts? Then it's, okay, we know how they gained access to the accounts, but how did they gain access to the Twitter admin panel? And then it's, okay, How did they gain access to the Twitter admin panel? Okay, we sort of get that now, but then how did they get access to the Slack, which had the Twitter admin panel information? And then within that, there's all the secondary questions, such as why did they do what they did with these accounts? Why did they target these specific accounts? You know, the list goes on. So, we have all those aspects now down flat. And now we get to the Twitter Friday night update drop. Late last night, even after that New York Times report comes out in the evening with the Slack information and the OG username confirmation from the earlier Krebs report, with additional information even with the Discord aspect of it, we find out from Twitter some specific details. And let me pull up that information specifically. Okay. So Twitter shares a post. And, you know, they basically say, can't give too much information, but here's what we could share so far. And this is the latest news we have up to right now. Right now, Twitter says that the tools were accessed. The hackers access tools only available to internal support teams. That's all they're telling us. I think we could, you know, deduce from this that the Twitter admin panel was accessed. And those screenshots that were going around on Wednesday are real. I mean, that's clearly how you could read that tools were accessed that are only available to our internal support teams. Twitter goes on. Whoever was in there targeted 130 Twitter accounts. Now, what does that mean? I guess they tried to gain access to 130 accounts. Seems like there was more, but 130 accounts were targeted that we know so far. Twitter continues. For 45 of those 130 accounts, 45 of them, the attackers were able to initiate a password reset, log into the account, and send tweets. Okay, seems like Twitter is now confirming the other aspect we found out from Lucky225. Seems like they had to reset the password, log into the account, in order to send the tweets. So those 45 accounts are probably your Musks, your Gates, your Uber, your Apple, your Kanye, your Wiz Khalifa, your Floyd Mayweather. Those are accounts that tweeted this Bitcoin scam out. Your Obama, your Biden, the list goes on. But there's more. So Twitter then drops this. And this is where we get into, well, this escalated big time. Twitter says, no one had, Friday night news dump here from Twitter. Times doesn't report this out yet because they don't know it. Krebs didn't report this out. Lucky225 didn't report this out. I didn't see this come from The Verge, from what are some other big tech outlets? I can't even think off the top of my head right now. Any of the big, tech, Vice, usually, Motherboard's usually on this. Didn't see this from anyone else, but Twitter basically breaking this news on a Friday night news dump. For up to 8 of the Twitter accounts involved, the attackers took the additional step of downloading the account's information through our Your Twitter Data tool. We are reaching out directly to any account owner where we know this to be true. Now you guys gotta let's pause here and understand this. Now, from what we know so far, hackers gain access. They take some OG usernames and sell them. They gain access to some big verified tweets. They can do anything with these tweets, with these access to these accounts. They decide to tweet out a Bitcoin scheme. They made a couple $1,000 from the OG handles. They made about $100K from the Bitcoin scam. All in all, seems like some low-level, really big hack from a hacker with low-level aspirations. Just wanted to make a few bucks. Could have, done a lot of things with those accounts, which we'll get to in a bit, but didn't. Decided to try some scams. Wasn't too successful, but $100K and a couple of extra $1,000 from selling usernames, not bad. When you hear that, you think, this is someone who found an exploit, was like, let's do some fun stuff while I'm in here. This is like a once-in-a-lifetime experience. Also, hackers love promoting that they do this stuff. They love getting the props. They love, again, it's all like a status symbol. They love being known as the hacker who was responsible for that big hack or that big attack or that big intrusion or that big, whatever it is they do. And that's for their specific instance. And up to this point, it seems like that's all this was. But why would they download the Twitter data for 8 Twitter accounts? Now, I told you guys to remember this earlier. When someone gains access to your Twitter account, they have access to your contact list if you've connected the Twitter app to your phone contacts, your name, your email address, your phone number, your complete Twitter history, a lot of specific details in terms of advertiser targeting, etc. To me, I think probably the most important thing they have access to, though, is your direct message history. They could have looked up that stuff right then and there. They could have took some screenshots, tweeted that stuff out. They were in there for a while. Why did this hacker or hackers download the data specifically through the Your Twitter Data download option? Now remember, Twitter also has to take the time when you pick this option to collect the data and compile it in a downloadable zip file. So again, this person was in here for a while. Had time to think about what they wanted to do, decide whose accounts they wanted to take. 8 people's Twitter accounts. All the data, direct messages, all that stuff is in the hands of this hacker or hackers now. And again, I don't think at this point there is any reason to believe there is some sort of foreign government involved. Because you're probably thinking, the Barack Obama account, the Joe Biden account. Well, it depends who you are. If you're someone who thinks Russia, was behind this, possibly, you're probably worried that, oh no, what if they're stealing secret information from Joe Biden's direct message account? Excuse me. What if they're stealing important information from Joe Biden's direct messages? I need a drink. 1 second. But I don't think that's what it is. Because think about who uses those accounts. Joe Biden and Barack Obama don't actually use their personal Twitter accounts. Their team uses them. And because of that, their team is likely not using direct messages for sensitive messages and information, to be quite honest. Direct messaging, it's good maybe for one-on-one, but if you have a team behind it, do you really want to be using direct messages for important, sensitive stuff? I don't think so. So I really don't think those accounts have much to worry about. Now, if you're someone like Elon Musk, who says who's very open in public on Twitter, and definitely runs his own Twitter account, who knows what he's saying in private direct messages? If I was him, and I heard about this, I probably would have been worried. But then, as speculation runs rampant, on Twitter late last night, There's an additional detail that comes out early Saturday morning. And this comes from Twitter itself. This is the latest update as far as I know. Twitter sees this speculation going around and, reiterates they're only going to disclose who was impacted to the actual individuals behind the impacted accounts. But Twitter says they do want to clarify one thing. The 8 accounts who had their data downloaded were non-verified users. This is where it gets interesting because who did they target? I mean, there are important figures on Twitter who don't have verified accounts. But you have access to Bezos, Bloomberg, Gates, Kanye, Kim Kardashian. And you grab the unverified users' DMs? Something's weird about that. And the thing here too is, when verified users were blocked off Twitter, while Twitter was mitigating the issue on Wednesday evening, and all the non-verified users were joking. I thought it was funny because a lot of blue checks suck, but a lot of non-verified users, the peasants of Twitter, were partying a life on Twitter without any blue checks, able to tweet, "This is great." They thought they were unaffected. But clearly we now know that just because we all noticed the stuff going out over verified users' accounts, because those are the accounts that are verified and have millions of followers, we didn't even notice what access was being, what was being accessed through non-verified accounts too. So we don't know who those 8 accounts are, the unverified accounts. We don't know why this person or persons would go out of their way to steal the entire data for these accounts. Now I see there's some speculation in the chat room that maybe these unverified accounts were just OG handles that are being stolen. But why download the Twitter data? I mean, again, you're in here you don't know how long you're going to be in the Twitter admin panel. You know how long you're going to be able to get access to these accounts. Remember, to get that Twitter data, they have to go into the Twitter admin panel, go to that specific username in the Twitter admin panel, change the email, turn off two-factor authentication if it's turned on, reset password, go to their email that they added to that user in the admin panel, change the password for the account they want to hack, go in there, click the My Twitter download, wait for Twitter to compile all the information, download it, repeat 7 more times. And this is just for the Twitter downloads. They also have time to steal accounts for the OG handle selling. They also have time to hack into at least 45 users, many of them verified specifically to tweet out this Bitcoin scheme. And like I said earlier, do this multiple times for someone like Musk, who tried to change their password and stop the hack, but was unsuccessful because the hacker kept logging back in and regaining access. This is, regardless of whether this is just some low-level hacker who just hit the jackpot with bumbling across a crazy exploit, or even a teenager living with their parents, even if that's all that there is there, this is still pretty crazy that this is how this went down, because it really shows how flawed these platforms are in general, and look how much power these platforms have. I mean, and this is the last thing I believe I mentioned earlier, but wanted to hold up to this point, and this is really what it comes down to. Imagine instead of tweeting out a Bitcoin scam, this hacker gained access to Biden's account and said, I don't know, I'm dropping out and endorsing Trump or something like that. I mean, yeah, people would have thought that was bullshit, but that would have really affected something for the moment, you know? Or even worse, gained access to Trump's account and tweeted, I have authorized a nuclear warhead to launch at China. Imagine that. I mean, you would believe that coming from Trump's account, wouldn't you? Or what if they use this to, I don't know, really fuck with a lot of people's lives, you know? Tank the economy. Basically sent out bullshit misinformation from trustworthy, verified accounts that could have caused people to cause harm to themselves or others. So, you know, it's pretty crazy. And, you know, this is the big story of the week in both tech and politics, really, or at least one of them. And I thought it was important to really break down everything because there was a lot of information out there in these past 3 days that came out, dripping out over a period of time that I think a lot of people just weren't aware of everything, if anything, really. What we don't know, and I'm sure there'll be more as we go along, what we don't know, exactly who is behind the account. I'm sorry, exactly who is behind the hacks. How they gained access to the Slack, if that aspect of the story is true. And also, we should confirm how they got access to the Twitter admin panel. Because if the Slack thing's bogus, then the question of the Twitter admin panel access is unanswered as well. And, you know, there's obviously some fun aspects of it that you don't really... Like, I don't care that Elon Musk got hacked. I don't care that some Bitcoin idiots sent like 0.05 Bitcoin to a scammer and lost their whatever that translates into US dollars today is worth. I don't care about those people. But the broader implications of this, you know, are big. Mike says, do you expect Twitter to divulge this? I don't think we'll know from Twitter exactly what went down, like from the company themselves. What I do suspect is people within Twitter will probably leak information to a major outlet like the Times. Whether we ever find out what exact accounts were affected, that we might not know. Because even someone in the company who leaks what happened to the company entity to the Times, they still might feel uncomfortable leaking the more personal stuff to individuals. You know, someone who was affected, especially someone who's not verified and a non-public figure, might not want to even be swept up into this. And by having their accounts named as part of it, they'll clearly be targeted in terms of just even people contacting them to talk with them, I'm sure. I think we will definitely find out who was behind it. Because I don't think this was a foreign government. I don't think whoever figured it out is that high level of an operator. I mean, definitely crafty to figure this out, but I think it was more the exploit was there and this person happened to have the knowledge and wherewithal to find it. Right place, right time. I think the fact that with the access to these accounts, they decided to sell OG handles and Bitcoin schemes instead of doing something bigger doesn't necessarily say anything about their intelligence. It says something more to me about the level of criminality they wanted to conduct. Like, I could see a very smart person getting access to this and saying, if I do something high level, I'm going to be in deep shit and more likely get caught. If I just steal a couple $10,000 worth of Bitcoin, maybe I can get away with this. Maybe, and even if I do get caught, won't be as big as causing a world war or something, or affecting a political outcome. So, I think whoever did this will likely get caught. Because I just don't think it was sophisticated enough to not get caught. All right. We'll definitely have an update in the story when more comes out for sure. But we're going to go to the second half of the show now for a short members, patrons only show. I'll read through some comments here. Patreon.com/MattBinder. If you could subscribe, if you could afford to become a patron, I'd really, really appreciate it because Patreon actually added an option to inform the Patreon creators that you subscribe to if you left them, if you had to cancel your subscription because of coronavirus related financial troubles. And since they added that option, I think everyone who has had to cancel their subscription to this show, and over the past few weeks there's been a few, cited that. And if that's your reason or not, if you can't afford to subscribe, please don't. Please take care of yourself first. But if you can afford to subscribe to the show monetarily, patreon.com/MattBinder, it would be greatly appreciated. Need you now more than ever to really grow this show and get it out there. What else? Can't remember what I need to promote. Oh, if you're in the YouTube chat, you could drop a one-off donation too in the YouTube super chat right there in the comments, the live chat. You could leave a super chat. I will read the super chats in the well, let me see if there's any super chats now. Sometimes there is, sometimes there isn't. Okay, no super chats right now. Maybe there'll be some in the second half of the show. I will get to those then for sure. If you can't afford to become a subscriber, you could support the show by subscribing for free to the YouTube channel, youtube.com/MattBinder. Follow me on Twitter @MattBinder. Follow me on Instagram @MattBinder. Follow me on Twitch, twitch.tv/MattBinder. Search any social media platform for Matt Binder. You'll find me. Also, tell your friends about this show. Tell your favorite creators, YouTubers, Twitch streamers, podcasters about this show. Tell me about your favorite streamers, Twitch users, podcasters, creators, whatever. I want to go on their show. I want to get them on my show. Let's do it. Let me thank the patrons, then we'll go to the second half. These are the people who make this show possible. Literally without them, can't do this show. Opening up my list of patrons. Abigail T, Alan B, Andrew H, Angela, RER, Baka, Ben, Benji, Bobby M, Brian S, Brosnan, Champagne Kami, Chris F, Christine H, Cindy G, Colin R, Connor R, CT, Cul-de-sac, Cyber Snowstorm, User D, Dan, Dank Uger, Dave K, David Z, Daya, Douglas V, Dragon Slayer, Eugene B, Frost K, Free Hat, excuse me, Ooh. FTW, Graham, Greywind, Greg D, Grim, Hitesh, Igor D, In Our Words, Jack D, Jacob W, Jameson, Test, Janelle A, Jasmine H, Jeremy M, JLS, John B, John S, Jonathan B, Joseph H, Joseph R, Joyce M, Justin S, Katie S, Kaushal, Kyle, Lisa D, Mariah, Mark S, Maddie J, Max W, me, Melissa M, Mitch V, Michael B, Michael J, Michael M, Mr. Danks, NS, Nick, Nicole A, Namde Net, Null Style, Odeth, Penelope D, Custer, Rad Dad, Remy, Ryan, Scott R, Seth K, Sheena A, Silicone Baby, Stephen R, Stephen S, Steve A, TM, Tamney G, Hypervisor, This Is Not Pizza, Tina M, Tom A, Why That Tie Guy, Wutopian, Zach M, and Zoe. Oh, one super chat making it in right before we go to the second half from comedian WW. This is not to say on air really, but I'll say it because it works. Check into Brett Weinstein on Twitter in the last 24 hours if you haven't already. I did. I've reached out to someone for a upcoming episode of Doomed, actually, to talk about things related to that. Ooh, teaser for an upcoming episode of Doomed. DoomedPod.com for the podcast. YouTube.com/MattBinder for the YouTube live stream. Patreon.com/MattBinder for the Patron subscriptions. Folks, see you in the second half if you're a live stream watcher and or Patreon subscriber. Otherwise, catch you next time on Doomed. All right. We are back. What's up, Patreon subscribers? How y'all doing? Yeah, I see the Brett Weinstein thing is the big talk of the town. Yeah, so I don't want to give too much away, but for patrons, I'll give you a little hint because I'm doing a upcoming show on it probably this week with someone who you'll know about shortly. So Brett Weinstein, who's an IDW guy, really honestly, his backstory is kind of boring. So we'll save it for the show that's dedicated to talking about the whole Weinstein thing. But Brett Weinstein, an independent dark web guy, who sort of, I guess, Matt Leck from Majority Report, the producer who replaced me when I left Majority Report. Yeah, you know, Sam apparently can only hire producers named Matt. So Matt Leck has been really going at some Brett Weinstein with some videos that Brett Weinstein has appeared in. And, you know, Majority Report left to go after the IDW guys. Sam has always discussed someone like a Dave Rubin. Yeah, Sam's always gone after someone like a Dave Rubin. Michael Brooks has been, he wrote a book about IDW, and also Sam Harris has always been on his radar. Man, yeah, he's the fake Matt, right, Dorian? I'm the OG Matt. Talk about OG handles. I'm the OG Matt. Uh, so Matt Leck has been going at Brett Weinstein on Twitter, basically calling him out for the various ridiculous statements he's made over a very long history of making ridiculous statements. And let me pull up the tweet actually. And again, these are the people who are against cancel culture. Remember this as I read this tweet. What do I do with it? Here we go. And so Brett Weinstein tweets out, "Attention Sam Cedar and at the Young Turks. Majority Report producer Matt Leck is broadcasting knowing falsehoods about me in a violence-prone environment. The danger is obvious, as are your legal and journalistic obligations. Immediate retraction, apology, and termination of Matt's employment." Now, let's go to Matt Leck's account actually before I go any further. Matt Leck, in response, deleted a tweet. The tweet deleted was, "Hey, Brett Weinstein, want to come on Majority of him to discuss this consultation work you're doing with the Department of Homeland Security in Portland, now that they're disappearing protesters in rented minivans?" Now, the tweet Matt deleted is his assumption of what Weinstein is talking about when he says knowing falsehoods about me. He didn't divulge exactly what these knowing falsehoods are or what he considers to be the knowing falsehoods that Matt Leck has perpetuated and dispersed. This is Matt Leck guessing that that's the tweet. Connected is a video of Brett Weinstein on a podcast saying how a buddy, or not a buddy, let me fix this before I too get sued by Brett Weinstein or threatened by Brett Weinstein. Brett Weinstein in the video says, "An acquaintance and or fan of the show," I believe is a better terminology for it, a fan of his show, contacted him saying, they were from the Department of Homeland Security in Portland and gave him some information about what was going down there. Now, I don't know if Matt Leck's tweet is exactly that far off, if at all. Consultation work doesn't necessarily mean getting paid for it. He apparently picked up the phone and had a conversation with someone working for the Department of Homeland Security in Portland. Now, this guy was speaking with him to give him some information, ostensibly to talk about what he was seeing on the ground or whatever he wanted to tell Weinstein. He clearly wanted Weinstein's thoughts. Did Weinstein give them to him? I mean, we don't know, I guess, but I don't think Weinstein just picked up the phone and took the call and then hung up. So consultation work fits that. If a friend calls me and asks me for some advice in a relationship, and that friend works for the Department of Homeland Security in Portland, you can classify that as consultation work for someone who works for the Department of Homeland Security in Portland. God, I am exhausted. But let's continue here. So Matt Leck tweets out the rest of the thread where he basically goes after the rest of the IDW. He did not delete the rest of that thread. Also, Matt Leck says that he has not done any work for TYT, so why was Brett tweeting at TYT to fire him too? I mean, I believe Sam is still a YouTube network a YouTube network partner under the TYT network on YouTube. But that's just a YouTube level partnership. Has nothing to do with the content. Has nothing to do with the staff. Sam owns his show. Sam pays Matt Leck. So, you know, the defenders of free speech and haters of cancel culture trying to get someone fired for a tweet. Oh, and Sam threw in some of his 2 cents here. First off, Matt Leck works for me, Majority FM, and not TYT. I demand a public retraction of your false statement. This is quoting Brett Weinstein on Twitter now. This is additional commentary from Sam on that tweet. Only when and if I receive it, I will forward your complaint to our HR, at which time Leck's commissary privileges will be suspended until completion of HR's investigation. Sam also continued, as Brett erroneously implied that Leck works for TYT and referred to tweeting as broadcasting and has refused to issue a retraction for either, I am calling on that Horse Skull podcast, which apparently is some sort of podcast Brett Weinstein is on, to terminate Brett's employment immediately, conferring with legal. I mean, honestly though, if I was still working with Majority Report, and I was in Matt Leck's shoes, I would be begging Sam to actually fire me. Because there's nothing that kicks off a career quicker than getting fired by a mob of angry people online. I mean, hell, look what happened when Sam got fired by MSNBC because of Mike Cernovich. I'd be on the floor, on my knees, begging Sam, please, Sam, fire me, please. You could rehire me in like a week or two. Just fire me right now. Fire me right now, and I'm gonna make a killing career out of this. I'm just gonna go public with how Brett Weinstein fired me, and get every IDW hater to sign up for whatever endeavor I pivot to. Yeah. Zoe asks, how big is MR's legal team? It's huge. It's the biggest legal team you've ever seen. It's the greatest legal team. Yeah. Yeah. Let me go to some of the Twitter comments here. So he says Lamo sucks so much he keeps screwing people over from beyond the grave. Well, in this case, actually, Lamo's account actually didn't screw anyone over. He actually helped the details of the hack into each individual account go public. Red of Bodum, I should say, says this was def a scam. Never received my doubled amount. That's a good comment, buddy. Grim says, if I recall, the hacker was a Twitter employee. Twitter says that that's not the case, actually. We don't know yet. We don't know yet. Red also says, did anyone blame Russia yet? You saw it online. I don't think anyone of any real importance did, but there was plenty of speculation running rampant online yesterday. I think the reason I'm yawning and getting a little bit tired is because, if you notice, we're out of soda. I gotta run to the store. Gotta run to 7-Eleven and get a big gulp after this. Water alone may hydrate me, but I need my caffeine and sugar. Zoe was laughing about the pros taking over Twitter and how Zoe we saw your help me retweets, Matt. Yes, I spelled out help me via retweets when I was locked out. So he says Lamos is a fucking snitch. Well, he's deceased now, so. But yes. That is true. I'm gonna keep that just in the chat. This when I name dropped my @sex Twitter handle example and pulled out a random porn site like Bang Bros to give the example of how you can use an affiliate account set up with that company to make money using that Twitter handle. The YouTube live stream chat had a lot of fun with that. So I'm gonna leave that in there. Oh, by the way, Zoe's asking, or at least she mentioned him. Baked Alaska did reach out to me after the last show. For those of you who don't know, the last show I did with Jared Holt was brigaded. The live stream chat was brigaded by right-wingers, including the infamous Baked Alaska. He wanted to call in. I was open to it, but I had a guest on, and I didn't want to do that to my guest. So I told him to reach out to me via email and we'll set something up. And he actually did. However, his email said something about going on his show. Which, nah. You're going to come on, we're talking, you're coming on my show. Because I want to control that conversation to make sure it doesn't go off the rails. I'm going to let you talk, but we're going to get some shit answered and questions. This isn't going to be for you just to spread whatever you want. This is going to be an actual investigative endeavor into your mind, buddy. Zoe says, I don't think the Bitcoin was the main reason. Sisyphean thought my, or, well, I called it this, but the professional Discord, aka Slack, Sisyphean enjoyed that description, it seems. Renee says Slack stock is going to plummet. Sisyphean says, yeah, Slack going to take a hit, but people will still use it. All companies I know use it. Hector says, people still use Zoom. Right. I mean, we did an episode. Zoom had an episode on Zoom. Look in the archives. Back when everyone started using Zoom and all the security issues came out. Did an episode where my guest and I completely ran through all the major security issues with Zoom. Excuse me again. This doesn't usually happen because I'm usually all coked up. With Coca-Cola, that is. Some people in the Twitter livestream chat think there could be an alt-right connection. I don't know about that. Maybe. There is some of that in the social media handle black markets. But it's mostly about making money, so it's not usually all that political. Actually, hang out in a number of those forums, because sometimes it's a good story to get out of there. That's where shit breaks. You're not going to find that, what happens in those forums. You know. Interesting hacks. Interesting platform details. Dog on the Roof says, saw the title of the YouTube stream and thought this was about Brett Weinstein. It's the great Twitter hack, Charlie Brown. Elon's DMs are probably bonkers, says Rhett. Yes, but those weren't the ones that were stolen. Philadelphia fan says Joe Biden needs help wiping. His DM list is not much of a worry. Sorry, Dorian, I can't tell you who was behind it. We don't know yet. Tell us who, Matt, said Dorian. Dog on the Roof says, oh no, this says unverified? Oh God, that's me. So he says, why say there have been downloaded data if they didn't want who it was to be known? My assumption is Twitter is actually trying to do the right thing in the face of their massive fuck up and be as transparent as possible while still maintaining the privacy of its users. And obviously not impeding further investigation by giving out information that they still can't divulge. I do think Twitter will eventually give out as much as they think they can. I do think more of it will come out from internal leaking from Twitter employees to news outlets. Again, I'm not saying Twitter's the company's going to do the right thing and be great, but I do think in terms of saving face, they're trying to be as transparent as possible. I mean, this is bad. I mean, Twitter is known for being the one platform that a lot of celebrities and politicians actually use themselves. Now imagine those people can't trust to use Twitter. From Twitter's perspective, obviously. Sisyphean says, it's impressive, I have to say. Nah, a Slack exploit. This isn't a script kiddie, right? I don't think this is a script kiddie, aka anyone who just purchases or downloads some sort of hacking script or tool on one of those black market forums and just, for example, brute forces a Twitter account, trying every combination possible, every password combination possible to try to break into an account using one of those tools. Now, I don't think that doesn't seem to be the case here at all. Whether Twitter was lackadaisical with their Slack security, or whether we have an additional problem with the Slack security having an exploit, which would bring in a whole new company's security issues. I mean, Zoe says, I think the craziest part is how nonsensical it all is. It's really all over the place. And if this person was really smart and conniving, one really out there thing to say is maybe the OG handle stuff and even the Bitcoin scheme were a cover. I mean, I don't believe that. But until we know exactly what happened, that's a theory. I mean, the Bitcoin OG handle scheme is a pretty smart plan if you want to try to make as much money as you can in a short amount of time without being too destructive, without, causing any sort of damage that would find you in real trouble. I could see that being a scenario. Not every, person wants to inflict maximum pain to make a, some people are like, if still skim a little here and there from everyone and I could make a couple bucks. It's much different than I'm going to break into your bank account. I'm going to break into the bank vault actually and steal everyone's money. Or it was never about the money. And we're all focusing on it, though. Who knows? We'll find out more. Lions says, thank you, Binder, for the breakdown. No problem. Thank you for joining me today on this wonderful Saturday night. Banana Guard says, Binder! Oh, right. Look at that. That Trump video that he tweeted out with like the Linkin Park song used in it. The video got taken down because of a copyright claim, probably from Linkin Park or their label. Right. Mike T says, sounds like a disgruntled employee. I mean, it's possible. Twitter seems to be refuting that, though, in the information they're giving. They're saying it was improperly accessed. Poe Money says, I miss Tech TV. That's what I'm not trying to do Tech TV, obviously. That's not. But what I try to do with this show is cover these more. This is a news and politics show that focuses on the tech and online and web cultural and movement sort of aspects of all that. I mean, I cover everything really. I mean, we've had our week of getting progressives running for office on this show. Before the New York primary, we've had all sorts of different shows. But, this show really does primarily focus on the right wing and how they use, YouTube and other platforms to do what they do. It's about conspiracy theories that perpetuate online. QAnon, Pizzagate, those who spread these conspiracy theories. And cultural, political stuff in terms of like the web culture. This fits right in there too with the technology aspect as well. Yeah, I just try to. That's what this show is sort of. All right, Zoe. Last time the Baked Alaska Bros, as you call them, were on here. They gave me a bunch of thumbs down, right? Give me that thumbs up. Give me that thumbs up. I gotta remember to do that like a real YouTuber. Don't forget to like and subscribe and give it a thumbs up. Yeah, Mike. Hope they don't hack me. Lord Arion says, Matt, you should definitely go on Hassan's Twitch. Yo, you guys, if you want me on Hassan's Twitch, contact Hassan and let him know that you want me on his Twitch. I'll be happy to go on Hassan's Twitch. Silicon Baby says, oh my god, the Brett Weinstein stuff is hilarious. So he says, so yeah, Matt is aware of what's going on. Of the shit going on, actually. I actually learned it from Binder. Oh, wow, thank you. I'm glad I could help. Grim, you don't like Hassan? Or as you call him, Jenk's nephew? He gave a platform to Amy Therese, Reply Ghouls, Liz Francek, and Brace Belden, as well as Capo Craphouse Nihilist Matt Chrisman. Grim, I think you're wrong about some of those people on there. Zoe says, hey, Matt Binder, I know this really cool creator with a podcast on YouTube called Doomed, hosted by a talented guy called Matt Binder. You should have him on. Oh, he was on today. He was my guest. Zoe else says, oh, God, a Brett Weinstein episode? Gary says, everyone should join the hashtag Stop Matt Leck movement. Lord Arion says, all these IDW free speech people are little cucks. Dorian says, I never expected Brett Weinstein to engage in cancel culture like this. Comedian says, I lost some respect recently for a buddy who told me Brett Weinstein was a lefty. Oof. Comedian says, does Sam like his producers to have that name, Matt, so he could walk all over them? See what I did there? I see what you did there. Clever girl. Miss Heathen says the IDW kicked out Dave Rubin. Oh, yeah, I forgot about that. Dorian says, you mean the canceled Dave Rubin? Silicone says, oh, $2 super chat from Silicone. I'm drunk. Here's money. Thank you, Silicone, and take care of yourself, please. Be a, safe, happy drunk. So he says, if we used Metal Gear Solid logic, you're naked Matt and Leck is solid Matt. Well, I'm often naked Matt, I guess. Sisyphean says, what does TYT have anything to do with it? I think I answered that. That comment might have came before I answered it, though. Miss Heathen says, I really want to laugh for sure, but the feds arresting kidnapping protesters, and Andy No is saying war crimes are okay when dealing with anti-fascist super soldiers. Fine journalism from the fascists. Yeah, we'll be diving into what's going on in Portland too. Right. TY puts MR as part of their affiliate shows. MR is an official TYT network affiliated YouTube account. Basically, Sam's just able to take advantage of TYT having network privileges, which means, multi-channel network privileges, I should say, which basically means TYT handles a lot of the copyright claims and stuff like that for the channels in their network before they get to YouTube, which means a lot of those channels get to avoid any problems with their accounts being monetized. That's the main benefit from being part of a multi-channel network. Yeah. Folks, I am sorry. I gotta say, after being home for, what is it, 4 or 5 months now? In a small Queens apartment with 2 small children, 1 and 5 years old. I love being with them. It's great to be home. It's great to avoid the commute. But man, it's really starting to catch up with me. It's exhausting. It is exhausting. And I stupidly forgot my caffeine today. So I'm gonna have to say goodbye shortly. I mean, we're already at the 2-hour mark, so it's not like you're getting a short show. I'm just not able to go even longer than usual. Here's a few more comments, and then we'll call it a show until next time. Dog on the Roof says TYT should hire and then fire Matt, though. Sisyphean says, what happened in Portland will continue. We've gone fash. Bob says, Majority Port is no longer a part of the TYT network. Maybe. Maybe Sam's changed it since, but when I was last there, and I know in the years after, they still were. So maybe there's a recent update that I'm unaware of. The Free Pie, or Free P, Matt Leck could start the intellectual light web. The only thing to defeat the IDW. SS1964 says Russia was trying to hack our coronavirus data this past week. I saw that recently, yes. I have to look further into that one. Miss Heathen says, someone send Matt some water with a small drone. I could really use a soda, actually. Grim says, coronavirus vaccine research should be free and open source. Rhett says, we love our cops, our law enforcement, right? Talking about the Portland stuff, right? Yeah. We love our military, they're important, right? The Free Pie says, isn't Baked Alaska's whole thing to go off the rails, though? I don't know if he's capable of having a sincere conversation. Well, hey, I'm more interested in how he got there. I think the most fascinating thing about him, actually, specifically, is how the fuck someone got hired by BuzzFeed to begin with and start his whole career there. And obviously, I mean, either he had these beliefs, or another interesting aspect would be, how did he come upon these beliefs if he didn't already have them while working at BuzzFeed? I think there's something interesting there. And obviously, the reason I have him on this show is because there'd be a point to it. I'd be able to handle an interview like that. Whereas, if it goes off the rails, I could just say, take care, have a nice day, and end the show. Or at least end the interview, I should say. I mean, I think there's value in it, if there's something there. There's some discussion in the live chat about where the camouflaged, non-ID'd armed forces will go next after Portland. You see people speculating Atlanta, Baltimore. Yeah. I don't know if we'll have this conversation with someone who knows. But it's hard to imagine they're sophisticated enough to do this nationally. Especially with just months left of the election. And Trump not looking good in terms of winning. Grim says Elon's DMs equals Stormfront. That would certainly be a big news story, a revelation, if you will, for sure. Mr. Nice Guy says, are you Bizarro John Oliver? I mean, I don't have the accent. Nor do I think I look like him all that much, actually. I mean, I look like a lot of people. Oh my god. There's a lot of people you could say I look like. I've gotten a number of, you look like this person. I've been like, yeah. I don't think John Oliver fits the bill, though. Sisyphean says, any blue city they'll go after. They'll go for ones with more cultural significance. Umar says, those that can't use Twitter just go on Gab. No, it's Parler now, buddy. It's Parler. Liz Stahl says, Twitter's algorithm is very different. Their security is very different. What was that in reference to? I missed something there. Okay, here we go. Here's more. Liz says, Twitter's APIs run very differently. That's important to know. They're significantly more compromised. Do you not agree? Twitter has had API issues before. But from what we know about this hack, it doesn't look like it's related to Twitter's API. I know that was speculation early on, though, Liz, so you have a point. Because there was a tweet from the Twitter dev account on the 2 days before the attack where they teased some updates they were rolling out to Twitter's API. And when people saw that 2 days later, when the hack was happening, they were jokingly tweeting out saying, I wonder if it has anything to do with this. Good job, guys. But from what we know about how the attack happened, it's not related to the Twitter API. As far as I know. As far as we know so far. It does seem like these credentials were posted somewhere for the Twitter admin. The access was gotten somehow for where those credentials were posted. It seems like Slack might have been the place. With those credentials, this person got into Twitter's admin, changed the email addresses for certain accounts, reset the passwords for those accounts, got those new password links to their own email because that's the new email they put for those accounts, and that set off the whole chain. The free P or free pie, I don't know what it is, says, Mr. Binger, do you watch a lot of movies in your free time? It ebbs and flows depending on the kids and how they sleep at night and how much work I have to do. Because I got various different, you guys know I do various different things in terms of writing and then video work, and others I do campaign work. I do this show. But then also, if the kids wake up in the middle of the night, we ain't watching a movie, Zoe says, go on Hassan's Twitch now. I can't go on the Twitch now. I'd fall asleep. Rhett says, I will spam his Twitch for you. Dog on the Roof says, maybe Matt can get some YouTube tips from Baked Alaska. Get him saying, let's see hearts in chat every 2 minutes. Dorian says, Hassan is live now, so we could go brigade his chat and tell him to talk to Matt. But it's a follow only chat, so we'd have to follow. Grim is not happy that I'm defending some of those people he doesn't like. You're just badly misinformed, Matt. Grim, how about we do this? 1 week where I need a guest. Why don't you come on this show? And I want you to really detail I'm being honest here. I want you to detail for people your issues with some of these individuals. Now, I agree with you on some of them, for sure. Like Amy Therese. I mean, I don't think I think she's small, very, very small in this world. So I don't really pay her much mind. But I agree with you on someone like her. But others I don't. So I would love you to come on and you could lay it out and actually try to convince me with evidence and everything. Miss Heathen says, all the TY2 crew are sketchy to me. Zoe says, I like Emma. No, they're good people. They're too lib, says Silicon Baby. All right, folks. Miss Heathen says, Matt, you're all good. Smoke a bowl, go to bed. I don't smoke. I don't drink. I don't do drugs. I'm straight edge. Oh, wait. What's Dorian? Who's this? Twitch.tv/K Who is this? Twitch.tv/K Swiftly. Doomers, if you crave more live stream content after this, come to twitch.tv/K Swiftly. She's super dope. Silicon Baby says, I second K Swiftly. She owns. Well, let's see. Who is she? I'm not familiar with K Swiftly. She's playing a video game. Is she just a cool game streamer, or is this usually or is this a political stream like how Hassan does, where he talks politics and plays games? I'm unfamiliar. If she's someone worth having on, let me know. And if she has guests on her show, I'd love to go on there. Oxy says, did Coke drop their sponsorship of Doomed? Seems so. Right? I don't have any Coke in the house. Hector says, hey Matt, do you believe the 2020 Prez polls? I do. They look pretty solid. Trump is a shit show right now. I mean, he always was, but how you mishandled this pandemic, the easiest thing for any elected official to literally just appear like a leader. I mean, look at Cuomo. Appears like a leader while cutting Medicaid in the state, and his positive ratings go through the roof. So easy for an elected leader to come out looking at like this in a positive manner, and Trump can't even fake it because he's that big of an a-hole. The Free Piece says John Oliver is comically British, even to someone from the UK. Yeah, he's pretty British. Okay, we got people making analogies as to who from the left is which Metal Gear Solid character. I'll leave that to you. I'll leave that to you guys, I should say. Grim says receipts are already in Discord, and Amy just got banned for a second time for posting a Pepe that said honk honkerler. I know Amy's bad. I'm talking about other people that you mentioned. Mariah says, we love you, straight edge. Matt, I'm sober too. Good vibes. Oh, what? Huh? Oh, we love your straight edge, Matt. I'm sober too. Good vibes. No punctuation. I just went off on a ramble there. Olivier says, watched True North last weekend. John's fear of bears was quite entertaining. Mariah says, Amy Therese is nuts. That she is. Who's HMod? I don't think TrueAnon, Chapo, and TMBS love Amy Therese. Miss Heathen says MAGA masks. Trump missed out on that grift. No, they actually are selling Trump masks. Funny enough. Seems like a bad marketing ploy to tell your audience, your customer base, not to wear masks, but then also try to sell masks. But what do I know? Poe Money says, that's a lot of chat to ignore. I can't read this all. I can't. It's just too much. When more people watch the show, and as the show grows, it's going to be impossible to read all of them like I used to. Grim says, dirtbags gotta stick together, though, in terms of all those. Oh, this all stems from TMBS with David Slavic and Heidi Matthews. Okay. Mariah says, Matt, I loved your shitpost episode. So he says he completely skipped the whole MGS part. Listen, you guys could take care of that. I'm not on the I'm not on the inside of that joke. Hector said, can this country last until January 20th without imploding? I think the country will be fine. I think a lot of people in it won't be. So he says the Metal Gear Solid stuff was the most important part. All right, Grim, you should come on this show and we'll do it. We'll do an episode literally like what's rising on the what's the dark side of the left or something like that, and you could make the case. Is there a dark side of the left? Because I know there is a dumb left, a loony left. I don't pay that much attention though because they're powerless. They're usually the Seth Rich truthers, or we need to have solidarity with the far right because we are the far left. Yeah, those people, no, but they're so small in numbers. I don't know enough about your claims about Adolf Reed and Liz Franzak. You have to show me that. That I'm not familiar with. But that's for another day, all right, buddy? Mariah says, I only come to the chat to compliment Matt. Everyone should just do that. Dorian says, there's dum-dums and then there's stupid poll. Zoe says, it's such an easy series to understand, though. You have a guy named Snake who has clones all named Snake. Then there's this secret organization that came out of another secret organization. I played Metal Gear Solid back in the day. I remember, but I don't remember anything about it, to be honest. I haven't played it in many, many years, decades. All right, folks. Let's end it with this Miss Heathen comment. Miss Heathen, you are beautiful, Matt. I love it. Grim has suggested 2 good names. I'll write them down for sure. Will do. Take care, everybody. Hope you enjoyed today's show. Who is this? I'm sorry. Someone just joined the chat just to say LOL. Shadrick. It's the first time I've seen you comment and all I see is LOL. Devoid of all context. It's got me wondering, what's the LOL about? I'm actually quite interested. I don't think I'm going to get it. I can't believe I stuck around to find out. All right, everybody. See you all next time on Doomed.